Hey there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the THW Hockey Raiders Playoff Preview Series. We're at the Stanley Cup Final. We've got Joey and Mike with us. Joey is being arrested as we speak. He's got the alarms going off in the room that he's in, and we're hoping he makes it through the show with us. He's going to be covering the Florida Panthers. And then we've got Mike with us as well, covering the Vegas Golden Knights.
They arrest
Joey,
you from noise complaint, guys. Noise complaints.
I was just gonna say, Joey, I'll start with you. How you doing? Are you about to get a ticket or something like before the show ends? Are we gonna have you the whole way through?
I'll do my best. I really don't know why my camera's flashing, to be honest, but you can get arrested for noise complaints. So be careful if you guys are screaming for your teams this weekend.
Yeah, well, there's going to be a lot of people screaming in Florida and a lot of people screaming in Vegas. A lot of tourists screaming in Vegas too, probably based on money. We'll see how all that goes. Mike, how are you?
I'm good. I think Joey's Panthers are under arrest for stealing the hearts of Maple Leafs fans, Bruins fans, and Hurricanes fans. So they're running felons at the moment. That's why the sirens are on, I guess.
Maybe that's a very good point, because we are talking about two teams here. One, the Florida Panthers, who barely, as Matthew Tkachuk said on TNT when he was sitting there with Shaq and Charles Barkley, barely got into the playoffs, and nobody expected them to do what they're doing. And they have gone all the way to the final, and they haven't just gone all the way to the final. They basically, I mean, outside of Boston, because they had to come back and win those three at the end there. But they've walked through some of these teams, and once they got through the Boston Bruins, they have looked almost unstoppable. Joey, what do you think here? Like, what are we looking at with this Florida Panthers team? Is this a team that's just undeniable at this point? They are on a roll. They've gotten over the President's Trophy winners. They, by the way, were last year's President's Trophy winners. So this is a very good hockey team. So really, we probably shouldn't be at all surprised that they are where they are. And starting here on Saturday, June 3rd, they're going to get the chance to win their first ever Stanley Cup. What are we looking at here with the Florida Panthers?
Well, I'm just as shocked as most of the fans because, like you said, they were last year's President's Trophy winners, but they went in and they completely revamped the roster. You don't have Claude Giroux anymore. You don't have Ben Sherratt, which that never really worked out, but he was still serviceable. And you trade away your 100-point player for Matthew Tkachuk, and you're sitting here thinking, okay, they're just going to blow it up, try to see what they can do next year. And they've proved everything wrong. They're buying into Paul Maurice's system. They've shocked the hockey world. And I think we're looking for them to do that once more. Matthew Tkachuk has shown how much of a clutch player he is. Barkov, Duclair, and Bobrovsky have found their games in the playoffs. I think they can make some real noise in this cup final.
Yeah, I agree. And we're going to talk about some of those players here coming up right away. Mike, I'll switch it over to you and talk about the Vegas Golden Knights. This is a team, unlike Florida, that most people thought was going to be a pretty solid team. Now, there were questions at the beginning of the season about their goaltending. They'd gone through 5 goalies. But they stuck with it, and they were really leading the Pacific Division for most, if not all, of the season, with the Oilers kind of creeping in there at the end there, seeing if they maybe could take it from them, but they didn't end up doing that. And then it was Vegas who defeated the Oilers and then moved on to Dallas. And that lack of a better word, kind of dominated the Dallas Stars. They tried to hang in there at the end there. It didn't quite work, but Vegas is a pretty good team too. What have you seen from the Golden Knights so far in the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, starting from the beginning of the season, there was a lot of skepticism about them just because of how they missed the playoffs the year before and how their team is outlined with a lot of money being committed to 3 players, a lot of their salary cap. And I think this season and their playoff run's been embodied by their head coach and how they've played. And it's cliche to say a coach reflects how the team plays, but they've never stumbled. They've never fallen into one of those slumps. And in the Western Conference, if you don't lose 4 games all year in a row, that's good enough to get you the top seed in the conference. And the narrative was, oh, the conference is a weak conference. But I think the best way to talk about their playoff run is they play to their opponent, they play to their situations, which is such a classic coaching thing that every coach will hope they get. But it's very reflective in how they've played against the Jets, the Oilers, and the Stars. And the best moment when I was watching was in Game 6 when they played the when they played the Oilers. They had a 2-goal lead, and everyone on the ice for every shift knew what the drill was. 10 minutes in, 4 minutes in. It's like, okay, we're in a 4-minute drill now. We know what to do for that 4 minute. We know how to handle this 4-minute drill. We know who we're up against. Let's keep ourselves from shoot. Let's keep the shots to a minimum, also the high danger chances to a minimum. They knew, and everyone on the ice knew this is how we're coached. This is what we're supposed to do, and it's very reflective in how they play. Like they're very disciplined, but a well coached team that it's reflected, and that's why they're in the final.
Well, and they seem to be a team that can sort of play any style, right? Like they come in and they outscore the Oilers, who were, if not the highest scoring, one of the highest scoring teams in the NHL this season. They played a different style against the Dallas Stars and sort of took that series over. They seem to be willing and able to play any sort of game and still be in control of it in a lot of ways. Joey, let's switch over to some of the players who have been the most impactful here. When we're talking about the Florida Panthers, we've got Matthew Tkachuk with 21 points so far in the playoffs. Carter Verhaeghe with 15 points, Alexander Barkov 14, Sam Reinhart 11, Sam Bennett 11. Lot of talent on this team, and you mentioned it. It's a huge changeover, but Matthew Tkachuk has sort of led the way here, along with Sergei Bobrovsky, who's been fantastic for them in goal. I suppose you could say there's somewhat of a debate over who might be the Conn Smythe Trophy winner. That was a mouthful. If it goes that far and they are able to award that to one of the players on this team, who are you picking? Who's been the better of the two, and anybody else that you're noticing that you're watching here?
I think if I had to sit down and award it, as great as Bobrovsky has been, he's been lights out on most nights. You got to give it to Matthew Tkachuk. He's just so clutch. He holds the record, I think, for the most overtime game-winning goals in a single postseason with 3. And he leads, I believe he's third in all players in the postseason with 9 goals. In terms of anyone else that's really kind of showed up, of course, we talked about Barkov and Verhaeghe, but not too many people have been talking about Brandon Montour. He's easily been Florida's best defenseman. As a matter of fact, I believe he now owns the record for, I believe it's most points by a defenseman in the playoffs in Panther history. He's completely overshadowed everyone on the roster. And that's not to say that Gustav Forsling or Aaron Ekblad aren't holding their own weight, because they are, but Montour has just come out and just knows what he's doing, and he's playing at a elite level, which Zito is probably thanking God for what he got rid of just to get that piece.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, I don't watch him as much as you do, but he's sort of come out of nowhere, hasn't he? I mean, he came from Buffalo, other places where he was a really talented defenseman, but not at this level. Like, this is a whole other thing we're talking about here, the way that he's played. It is something else to kind of watch. And Florida's got a pretty good group of blue liners there too. Radko Gudas is really nasty. You've got all sorts of good talent on that team, but you're right. Montour has been an offensive juggernaut, and it's been something else to watch. I'm going to move to Mike in a second here, but I do want to ask you about Bobrovsky. Do you believe that this is his series to win? I mean, we're talking about a veteran, proven guy who's been among the elite. Now, he's been hit or miss sometimes, and sometimes he's fantastic, and other times he's had seasons where he's not so great. But so far in this playoff run, he's been really, really solid. Is he kind of the edge, the leader here in this series? Do you think if it's a goaltending duel that he's the automatic winner here?
I believe so. Adin Hill has definitely showed he can hold his own, but it's really going to come down to experience. It's really going to come down to who can handle their own. And for me right now, it's Bobrovsky's series, or I guess for lack of better words, Bobrovsky's series to lose. If he starts slipping up like he does in some occasions during the regular season, they could easily lose this series. But Bobrovsky, I believe, understands the situation he's in, and he understands the pressure, and he's been through it before. I believe he can hold his own in this.
Yeah, he's been something else in these playoffs so far. Mike, let's switch over to you and talk a little bit about some of what Vegas has done, the players on this team. Jack Eichel, in his first ever playoffs, has 18 points. Jonathan Marchessault with 17. He's been really solid. Ivan Barbashev with 15 points. Mark Stone with 15 points. William Karlsson's 14 points. Pretty well-rounded team. Eichel's probably been the standout here, but as we talked about, Adin Hill's been really, really solid considering they went through 5 goaltenders. He's really stepped up at the exact right time to step up. Let's start with Jack Eichel. What have you seen from Eichel so far in the playoffs, and how do you think he's performed in his first ever run at this?
Yeah, I mean, Eichel really rose to the occasion. I think when in the greater picture of this playoffs, one of the takeaways is not just along with Eichel is that that second tier of elite players, like everyone talks about McDavid and Draisaitl and the Hart Trophy winner Austin Matthews, those perennial Hart Trophy finalists. But that second tier, which is like Matthew Tkachuk, Jack Eichel, Sebastian Aho, you could even put Jason Robertson up there, who for the Stars had a very good season. And he's one of those players that people are starting to realize now he's one of the best players in the game. And Jack Eichel is in that, you'd say he's in that tier. He's risen to the occasion. He's stepped up in all facets of the game. And this is his first time in the playoffs. And he's playing to that elite level that you want your Stars to play at. And I mean, yeah, you look back at that trade now. Originally, when that trade was made with the Sabres, people were thinking the Sabres actually are winning this trade because they got three players from the Golden Knights. They all were playing pretty well, and they also got a draft pick, which I think became Matthew Savoy or he was very good in the pipeline for the Sabres. But Eichel's playing. He's not only having a great post playoff run, but he's creating scoring chances. He's finding back himself. He's helping out defensively, controlling the center of the ice. He's beating teams. He's beating teams. He's also a player that I guess you could say embodies the way Vegas wins, where he beats teams in a variety of ways. He could beat them in the fast game, he can slow the game down if he wants, control the pace of the game. And he's been doing that. I mean, him and Mark Stone, who I think is really the underrated guy for Vegas because of his defensive ability to center that, to control the middle of the ice that way, and step up defensively. The Golden Knights, along with their depth stepping up, their Stars have risen to the occasion. I think.
Yeah, no, they've been really good, and Eichel's been. I didn't know what to expect from him, considering he played so long and not ever made the playoffs with the Buffalo Sabres. But now that he's there and coming off of surgery, right? We didn't really know exactly how he was going to. He's been really, really good for them.
I think also that on the note of the surgery, that's something to think about. Is that when he joined Vegas last year, I think it was before the surgery happened, and now it's like you're seeing him come back to the full form. This is what Vegas got when they acquired him. And this is what they were looking for when they acquired him. They were hoping for, and now it's starting to show. You're seeing that. I don't want to say like better than. I'm not going to say better than McDavid, but that second tier, those second tier stars, he's in that. He's right up there with the best of them. Him and like Matthew Tkachuk's having the same type of run where it's like he's established himself as that tier 2 elite player that you want to carry yourself.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, he's not Connor McDavid, but if he wins the Stanley Cup and he gets it before Connor McDavid, it will move him closer in that conversation for sure. And it will give him an edge in one respect over something that McDavid has been unable to do so far. But yeah, Eichel's been great. What about Adin Hill? What have you seen so far out of him? He's been really solid. I mean, and the timing of his being able to step up here and play the way that he's played has been something else. I mean, he's just been so steady for them. And I don't think anybody would have expected this. Did you?
I mean, how could you? I mean, lifelong journeyman, goaltender. I think he's been on Arizona, San Jose. He's been around like for his career. And what's crazier about this is that Logan Thompson was starting, or I think. I'm trying to remember now.
They had Laurent Brossoit, they had Logan Thompson, they've got Jack Hamill ready to go, but Jack Hamill, Jonathan Quick.
Jonathan Quick's, he's still on their team, and you were expecting, he's going to come in because he's the playoff proven goaltender, and Vegas was like goaltender by committee. He came in, I think it was game 3 against the Oilers, and just picked up where he left off. And I mean, he's stepped up, and he's played well. I mean, it's very interesting to think about. I generally am thinking about this in the greater sense of like, does elite goaltending matter as much? / like, how do teams manage their goaltenders, or how do they manage goaltending? And one takeaway is that you ride the hot hand, and he's been there. He's been the hot hand. He hasn't fallen off. He hasn't had a bad start where they're like, oh, you need to pull him, and they've kept him going. And the same with Bobrovsky. I mean, if Bobrovsky fell off at any point, they would pull him for a start. But they've both been the hot hand, and they're going to ride the hot hand for this and keep going.
Yeah, these are two teams that goaltenders have been solid pretty much through the entire thing, right? We've talked about other teams that have been eliminated at this point, and they've had some of their goaltenders, even Jake Ottner in Dallas and Stuart Skinner in Edmonton and other teams where they've had some bad games, but neither one of these two goalies has really stunk it up. Like they've been solid all the way through here. It's been fun to watch. It'll be quite the duel.
I think the conversation also is because I listened once to Elliot Freeman, Jeff Merrick on their show, and they were talking about teams that split goaltending starts the entire season, and you run a goaltending duo the whole year. When you get to the playoffs, all of a sudden you're asking one guy to be the starter for the entire run. And how do you manage that when you get to the playoffs? And I think the Panthers and the Golden Knights are kind of figuring that out, that question, where it's ride the hot hand until it's not hot or gets hurt, and then go to the next person and see if they could keep it going, which I think they've both been able to do.
Yeah, well, Lion did have a couple starts in the first series against Boston. I think he was ultimately pulled in game 3 because I think maybe either his confidence was shattered or he was just getting absolutely just pelted with pucks out there. So they started with Bobrovsky, and ever since he's been an absolute rock in net. I will say this: I'm very surprised at the way they tried goaltending stuff with Carolina. If you guys remember, in game 2 with Anderson playing all those minutes in game 1, they went with Antti Raanta, and to his credit, he actually played relatively well. But despite, I think, holding them to 2 goals, I think to us to 2 or 3 goals, or 3 goals, my bad. They ended up switching right back to Anderson. So I think that may have been a huge factor in Carolina losing that series, but I guess we'll see when it comes to the whole goaltending situation.
Yeah, that's the question when you switch them out, right? Who do you go back to? Do you stay with the guy that you just put in and played really well, or do you go back to your starter if that's your designated starter and you did the switch because you wanted to give that person the rest? Well, so far these two teams haven't had a real need because outside of Florida and Boston going to 7, these series haven't really dragged on with a lot of games in quick succession and the 7-game series all the way through, right? So these goaltenders probably are a little bit more rested, which is a good thing. Joey, let's talk a little bit about keys to the series here. Now, we've talked about some of the players here, but what is going to be Florida's key here if they're going to take this from the Vegas Golden Knights? They are now, I guess, based on the way they're playing, you might not say underdog, but they are standings wise and points wise the underdog in this series. So what is it going to be that Florida's going to need to do to kind of take this one?
Keep playing their game, be hard on the forecheck, continue to force turnovers, and be road warriors. Vegas is a very, very, very tough team at home. I believe they're 6-2 this postseason at home, if I'm not mistaken. And historically speaking, Florida has never in the history of their franchise won at T-Mobile Arena. If they have any chance to win this series, they need to find a way to seal 1 on the road or more than 1 on the road. If they can do that, I think Florida has this game wrapped up. Tkachuk has to continue playing his absolute, keep using his clutch factor, and Bobrovsky cannot start slipping off and start having his inconsistency hit again. If he does, like I said, it could mean a whole summer of just thinking about what if and what could it have been.
Yeah, no, they obviously need their goaltending to be solid here again for one more series. Mike, what about you? Is there a key for Vegas here? Is there something that they need to continue to do or do that they haven't done, or just against Florida in general, a style that they need to play? What's the key for them?
One thing on the ice that I'm been thinking about that's going to be key is when Vegas creates turnovers. And one of the things that you look at Pietrangelo, Braden McNabb, their defensemen are good at is those outlet passes where they can get them to the blue line to start up rushes. And against the Panthers, especially when Barkov's on the ice, who's going to win? Can they thread the needle? And can the Panthers, especially Barkov, can he be the one to intercept those passes? and then start up the rush the other way. Because I think what's something that we've also begun to appreciate in this playoff run, watching all these games, is Barkov's his ability to not only create turnovers but start up the offense the other way. He's just quickly start up the offense and start up rushes. So in this series, one key is which teams can in transition gash the other, and if Vegas can successfully bring the puck into the offensive zone and start up those rushes, can they get the puck to Eichel at the blue line? All of a sudden, it's a 2-on-1 or it's a 3-on-2 situation. I think that's kind of something I'm thinking like, oh, that's going to be the game within the game, and like how are the Panthers? Are the Panthers going to win that battle, or is Vegas going to win that battle? The other interesting thing on that note is, like which teams' forward units are going to step up better defensively. I think like which teams are going to win on the forecheck, which teams are going to be able to create turnovers at the blue line in the neutral zone. Those like details. And I mean, the other big key is which goaltender stays hot. Is Adin Hill going to outduel Bobrovsky? Is he going to remain? Which clock is the clock going to strike midnight on Bobrovsky, or is it going to strike midnight on Adin Hill? And one of them turns into a pumpkin, loses the series. Those kind of the three big keys in the series that I'm thinking about as we're getting ready for it.
For me, I think this is a series of momentum. I think the team that gets off early and gets a quick win based on the way some of these series go. Now, Florida has come back against Boston, but outside of that, they've been pretty dominant in their other series. And I think that thing got them rolling. And once they got rolling, the momentum just hasn't stopped for them. And Vegas has found a way to consistently do it, but they had the momentum in the series against Dallas. So I think the team that gets off to an early start here and picks up a quick win is going to be the favorite. I think whoever wins game one for me is going to be the one who wins this whole series. So that'll be an interesting one. Joey, sorry.
I'm curious, like if it's a split series, who do you think has more pressure? If they split the first two games in Vegas, is there more pressure now on Vegas for the rest of the series, or do you think it's like par for the course?
For me, I don't think at this point Florida is worried about it, right? They've already proven that they can come back against the best team of the regular season, right? No one thought they would do that. Nobody expected that, and they did it. So in their mind, I'm thinking there's no hill they can't climb, right? So even if they're down 1-1 in the series or it's not looking good early, I think they know they can come back. But if they can get the lead in the series, I think that's where they really step on the gas, and I think that's going to be a huge thing for them. Joey, who's your MVP of the series? So we talked a little bit about the players, but who are you predicting is going to be, whether you pick Florida or you pick Vegas, it's totally up to you. Who's going to be the MVP for you in this series?
I think for this series, it's who else? Matthew Tkachuk. He's been an X factor in pretty much every big game in the series. He was a little quiet in round 2, but round 3, he found his way on the score sheet in every single game. And I don't think that's going to slow down anytime soon. He wants this not only for himself, but for his team and for his dad and Keith, who just couldn't get the job done. It'd be huge for both the Panthers and the Tkachuk family. So I think he's going to just come out with a chip on his shoulder and prove to everyone, hey, there's a reason I'm here, and there's a reason was traded for another 100-point goal scorer, or another 100-point scorer, rather.
Yeah, no, I think he's been something else here. Mike, who's your MVP of this series?
I mean, if the Panthers win, it's gonna be. I'm thinking it's gonna be Tkachuk, hands down. If Vegas wins, it's such a bland pick to say, oh yeah, Jack Eichel, and it's like those are the two Conn Smythe favorites, Jack Eichel, Matthew Tkachuk. I kind of one of the dark horse pick for MVP is Ivan Barbashev, who talk about a trade deadline addition where they got him in the middle of the Blues fire sale. They just kind of picked him up, and he's been one of their best players in this playoff run. I think he's one of these players that he could get a few goals early in the series, and one of those in a game 2 or a game 3, and help Vegas win one of those games. He's one of the players that he's really been. Not an X factor, but talk about a player that can take over the series for Vegas. He's the guy. But I mean, if I'm going to pick one, I'm going to go with Jack Eichel being the Conn Smythe. This series is kind of like between Kachuk and Jack Eichel, if one of them has a big game or one of them really carries their team in one of these games, they're getting the Conn Smythe Trophy and they're going to will their team to the cup. And it feels like that's kind of the big storyline between these two players, that where one of them can take over the series and might very much.
Yeah, if we're talking,
I don't mean to
go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I do believe there is one dark horse player. I'm sorry, I can't speak today. For Vegas that I legitimately think could win MVP if Vegas does find a way to take the series, and that's going to be Jonathan Marchessault. He has a chip on his shoulder. He's probably still not over being let go in the expansion draft all those years ago from Florida after having probably one of the best years of his career. He's probably still I don't want to say he has too much distaste, but I think for him, it would be even sweeter for him to take down the team that signed him all those years ago and decide, you know what, we're going to walk away from you and we're going to try to bring someone new in and pretty much prove them wrong. And he's been on fire pretty much all playoffs long. I don't see that slowing down.
Yeah, no, he's been really solid. And there is something said for a player coming back against their old team and just elevating their game a little bit. For me, I think this is going to be a series. Now, if we're talking point and skill, it's Jack Eichel versus Matthew Tkachuk, but I don't think that's going to be the key to the series here. What I think this is going to be is a series between Matthew Tkachuk and Mark Stone, and the two leaders and aggressive styles and the one guy that can will their team forward. Like Jack Eichel has been the point producer in Vegas, and he's been the skilled guy in Vegas, but it's Mark Stone's team. Once he came back for the playoffs, he really has pushed them forward. But Matthew Tkachuk, both on point production and in terms of leadership, has pushed the Florida Panthers forward. I think this, for me, is a series and a year that Matthew Tkachuk proves to everybody what he's probably already known, that he's one of the best players in the NHL. And I think if that is something that he can continue to carry with him through this series, I think he's the key for me. He's the MVP of this whole thing. And I think he's feeling in his head, maybe he's like undeniable at this point. So I'm not going to bet against him, that's for sure. But I think if whoever wins that battle, mentally and on the ice, aggressively and stuff, between Mark Stone and Matthew Tkachuk, I think that's who's probably going to win this whole thing. All right, let's predict it. Joey, I'll start with you. Who's going to win the series? How many games? What are you thinking here?
I've been counting them out all season, but I'm afraid to even say this. I hope I'm dead wrong. I'm praying I'm dead wrong, but I think it's going to be Vegas in 7. I could be dead wrong about that, but Vegas is hungry for something. You have Bruce Cassidy, who was literally one win away not too long ago from getting a Stanley Cup, and he's probably still trying to get some of that. And I think that team is just full of depth, both goaltending and everywhere else. And even though Florida has proven they can take down some of the top teams, Carolina, Toronto, Boston, I think the clock strikes midnight for Florida. I don't think they're not going to go down easy. They're going to win. They're going to win a couple games. That's why I said they're going to win in 7. But I think Vegas has also a big upper hand at home. I do believe Florida can steal 1 on the road, but Vegas is just firing on all cylinders right now. And it's always been about coaching and defense. And even their goaltending, who we thought wasn't going to be all that, has been stepping up. So as much as I hate to say it, and I hope I'm wrong, I'm going to take Vegas in 7.
That's a fair pick for sure. Mike, what about you? Who are you picking and how many games?
It's funny because I'm going with the opposite in the sense, like, I've counted out the Panthers too many times and picked against them, I think, all 3 times. And each time it's like they've proven me wrong. They've proven everyone wrong. I mean, I think if Vegas wins this, I think they'll actually do it pretty quickly. They'll win in 5, where it's like similar to the Stars series where they took control of the series early. And it was basically their series, especially after game 3, when the Stars from all facets of their organization looked like a mess by the end of game 3. But I think if they win, they're going to win in 5. But I'm going to go Panthers in 7, and on top of that, because I personally want to see this, game 7 goes to overtime. The only reason I root for that is because I'm obsessed with Game 7 overtime winners because the goal wins the game and the series. And it's only happened twice in NHL history. And I should know that because I wrote a whole long piece that the person behind the camera edited once. But a route for a Game 7 that goes into overtime, and the Game 7 game winner to win the cup is scored by Matthew Tkachuk, who then takes home the Conn Smythe. And a bold prediction would be that either Tkachuk or Jack Eichel score a hat trick in the series. I think we're just going to keep riding on the Tkachuk Eichel narrative that this final goes with.
I love the overtime scenario, but can it not go to 4 or 5, please?
Yeah,
I'm rooting for not just the series that goes the distance, because I think we haven't had one of those in a few years, but one that goes the distance that isn't a dud in the end. Because if you guys remember the Blues and the Bruins, a lot of those games were blowout games, and Game 7 was, I think, 4-0 or 4-1. So I kind of want a series that goes the distance, has a lot of overtime games, which the conference finals, both of them had plenty of overtime games. So you have a series that goes the distance, has a bunch of overtime games, and then Game 7 itself, when it's all on the line, it goes into overtime, and then you have one of these epic goals that ends the game and ends the series. That's what I would be rooting for.
So you're writing a Disney movie is essentially what you're doing right now, Mike. You're creating the perfect scenario for the NHL, because you've got two teams, and no offense to either team, but two teams that is probably going to have maybe the least interest in terms of a large audience for the final, and that is problematic for the NHL. So what they want is exactly the scenario you're describing. They want it to go a long time. They want overtime games on a regular basis. They want Game 7 to be overtime with the winner coming down to the last shot of their last goal of the game. That is the perfect scenario for the NHL with these two teams.
ESPN.
I think he's also writing my cause of death.
What's that?
I think he's writing my cause of death as well.
Yeah, maybe.
Game 7. I think ESPN finally got the broadcast last year, and it was like, okay, finally the NHL can be put on a national audience. Now it's on TNT, but now that it's moved on to both platforms, I think this would be the moment for the NHL where you want a series that not only is exciting and has all the storylines that people could follow, you want a series that forces First Take the next day to be like, oh, who's better? Who would you rather have on your team, Matthew Tkachuk or Jack Eichel? Oh, is Matthew Tkachuk a top 5 player in the NHL? You want that to be the conversation at the end of every game. You also want a series that is entertaining, where it's like, oh, what do you think was the turning point in Game 5 or the turning point in Game 7? And I think that's the kind of thing that, one, we root for in this series, but two, you could kind of see that happening, especially with these two teams with the players that they have that are finally getting on the national stage.
Yeah, and they couldn't have asked for anything more from Matthew Tkachuk in that regard, right? He's been absolutely everywhere. He's been open. He's been talkative. He's been walking people through the journey for the Florida Panthers and himself during all this. It's been perfect marketing for a team in Florida to be in the NHL Finals. It's been really good. I'm going to pick the Florida Panthers. I think that they're going to take this one. I just think there's something about the way that they're playing and the way that these series have gone, and the fact that they beat Boston, they beat Toronto. They and Carolina, they've beaten some very, very good teams, and I think this is theirs. I just think it's going to happen. I don't know how many games. I'll go 6. I don't know that we're going to get the Cinderella story that you're talking about, Mike, but I'm going to say 6 games. But I'm going to Florida. I really like their team. I really like the way that they played, and I think there's just something about it that's going to be really interesting. But we're going to find out.
I really hope you're right.
Yeah. For everybody else, though, put it in the comment section. Get on this video. Let us know. Who do you think is going to win the series? How many games? Put your comments in there. Talk about your MVPs. Who you think is going to be the star of the series? Let us know, and we'll answer your comments on the video. Don't forget, check out everything else. Both of these folks will be writing content at the Hockey Raiders, and you can check out their work there. And maybe we'll do another video when this is all over. Whoever wins the series, we'll probably have you on to talk about how happy and elated and everything is gone for that team. But thanks everybody for watching. Don't forget, check out thehockeyraiders.com. It's been another edition of the playoff preview series from the Hockey Raiders. Enjoy the Stanley Cup Final, everybody. It is the Florida Panthers versus the Vegas Golden Knights starting on Saturday. Talk to you guys soon.